What an exciting podcast you're getting ready to watch as we talk about how the strong help the weak. We know that it's part of your life and call. It's already what you do and how you see yourself. But God's Word also shares with us that we that are strong are to help the weak. Get ready for a great podcast. Hello, everybody. We're back for another Remnant Revealed.
Knocking them out, man.
Hello, Rick.
You know, we're over 50 episodes now.
Oh, my gosh. Are you serious?
Isn't that cool? I think we've got like 80 to 90
That is very
videos on YouTube, but over 50 episodes now.
Wow. That's a lot.
We've been doing it for a minute.
Maybe that's why I'm feeling tired today.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
No.
You know, I was thinking about it. I think everybody just thinks all we do is travel and then come back and do this podcast.
Yes. Well, let me clear that up for everyone. No, that we started this on top of everything else we were doing.
That's exactly
to try
right.
to help officers in the climate.
Full-time responsibilities with many other things. And
oh,
then the additional travel and hitting the road and
podcast,
sharing with folks, and then this podcast. We said this is in addition to, not in replacement of.
That is exactly right.
We should have rethought that.
We should have thunk it. I remember, and really when we started this, our heart was just to do some little videos to help some police officers.
All we want to do is a podcast.
Just a podcast.
Yeah, a whole lot more to it.
Little did we know.
Yeah,
it doesn't work that easy.
No, so, but it's been good. It's worth the fight.
Is.
You know,
it is.
So,
it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
And man, that last episode was powerful.
This is a good one.
It was awesome.
There is power in the name of Jesus.
Blessed our heart. Yeah,
that's right, man. That's very good stuff.
And you know, I think just so everybody understands this too, these are non-scripted.
Don't tell everybody.
Just so you know,
we just get on here and start talking.
It's non-scripted. We actually, these are things that come out of our heart.
On our heart.
One of my fathers in the faith taught me years ago. I asked him a question. I said, so how do you prepare, and what do you know what to preach, and how do you know, how do you do all that? And he said, well, son, I just live and walk before God and stay in my Bible, and then I preach out of my overflow.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we do here.
Get in the flow of
share,
God.
Yeah.
Right? Get in his flow.
Yep.
And then allow him to overflow.
That's right.
Is what you share with folks.
And it's pretty much what we do here.
Ask God what's on his
Moving
heart.
along, and then we just share out of the overflow of what's happening.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
I love it.
Yeah. Speaking of that, just got back from Boston. Yeah, went there to Boston, Massachusetts. We had a national meeting, board meeting for the Fraternal Order of Police.
It's a left board meeting.
So as you know, one of my other responsibilities is serving as the national chaplain for the Fraternal Order of Police.
Right.
And, it's a little different,
There's
being in law enforcement, then representing law enforcement, in whatever, contracts and budgets and all those other things. And then this newest opportunity of being able to be a chaplain, much like you do, but getting to walk alongside my fellow sisters and brothers.
That's awesome.
Greatest privilege experience I've ever had in my career.
Set up by God.
No other explanation for that by far. But getting to it's always nice because you get. You're literally bringing folks together from around the nation, and you get to hear that for all the differences and different jurisdictions and states and laws and all those other things, it's all the same. We're all facing the same challenges, same dilemmas, both at work and at home.
Absolutely.
And to just be able to get to walk alongside folks and be with them, and point them back to God. To me, I've just found there's no greater experience, right, than to just simply point people back to God.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, there's not a lot of pressure on it because you can forthrightly say to people, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would get through that. I don't know how I get through what I do other than God. And all I can do is point you back to him. He's got the answers. I don't.
That's right.
But then you share with him, right? And, man, it's awesome to watch him work. I can tell you one thing that I get the great pleasure of a few weeks back being in Alabama, and then this latest deal with folks from around the nation in Boston, is to be able to share with them that, hey, take heart, because God is on the move in the policing profession in the United States of America.
Absolutely.
Unabashed about sharing that with folks. They need to be encouraged in that. And the good thing is that you can speak to it with true experiences, right? It's not a theory.
Yeah.
It's not a wish or a hope. It's actual lived experiences that we're seeing across the country.
Right.
We're hearing from people literally around the world, but that God is up to something, and he is moving specifically within the policing profession. Keep going around and sharing with people. Firmly believe, been placed in my heart, that there is a true revival, a spiritual revival that's occurring within the law enforcement profession, leading the way. And boy, do we need it. Not just for the profession, but for our country.
I'm telling you, we need it.
So
majorly need it.
It's a great opportunity to go around the nation and just say, hey, keep your head up, keep looking up, because he's at work and he's moving mountains.
And while you were in Alabama, I was in Virginia. Boston. I mean, I'm sorry, Alabama was the last podcast. Again, people think we're just traveling all that. But I was in Virginia and got to love on some cops there in Virginia.
Oh, that's awesome.
Give them, I carry, my chief is wonderful to give me some keychain things and stuff like that.
Swag.
Margarettsville Police Department. And so I get to give those out and just love on and bless officers everywhere we go. And I was there for a church planters conference. And
a church planners?
Planter.
With a T.
With a T.
As in planting
where you
a church.
Plant a church, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You, as in reference to starting a church, like,
so you're encouraging,
like we did this. Yeah.
You're encouraging pastors who are going to start a church.
That's correct. Or sometimes Bible college students who come out of Bible college and believe that the call of their heart is to start a new work in a new town or a new city, or young men or young women who believe that God's called them to revitalize.
Well, let me ask you about that real quick.
Sure.
It may be interesting to our audience, our family, to hear about, but in a lot of ways, there's another big similarities within the faith world, churches and pastoring and all those things, of a retention crisis. You got pastors that are leaving the faith and leaving, either retiring, right? Dying off, but very few,
or
bailing out, and very few younger, newer women and men coming up and finding ways to serve God through faith. And that's another crisis that we're facing in our nation.
And I think something that every law enforcement department or police department should pay attention to is when there's a drastic reduction in Christianity, there's an increase in crimes, pressure, evil, demonic activity,
that's right,
evil, because darkness repels light.
Well, locally, had the opportunity where I was on a live television one morning and really raised that issue as somebody in law enforcement, calling upon the churches, the houses of worship throughout the community to come out from the four corners, saying as a representative of law enforcement to people of faith, we need you to engage right now. We can't hold this back on our own.
That's exactly right.
And where we see the church stand up in a community, it repels evil. It helps repel narcotics trafficking, human trafficking, the flow of crime. We always say crime follows the path of least resistance.
That's right.
So we say put up resistance in faith, and you will repel darkness from your community. You can very visibly and tangibly see it and feel it in law enforcement where that occurs.
What does a church, a pastor, and Christians stand for in their community? Doing what's right. So where you have the spirit of righteousness in the heart of man, you don't have to go in and enforce the law if I live the law on purpose with my heart.
That's a great point right there.
So the greater the level of the Christian voice in a community.
You're not enforcing the law on folks who are upholding the law.
Thank you.
You're enforcing it on lawbreakers.
Because their moral compass is dialed in to the greatest moral compass,
right?
And that's Jesus the Christ. So wherever, I've watched it over the years. I've been doing what I'm doing for a long time, just like you, and I've watched whole communities change because of the gospel being preached in that area where it wasn't to start with. A lot of missions work we do, we go into an area where there is no gospel, where there is no church, where there is nobody being reached.
See, think about that. A lot of people they're not used to knowing that's occurring.
Oh, yeah. Poverty, crime, incest, molestations, all of those things are off the chart.
Mm-hmm.
But as the gospel is preached,
as it takes root,
and lives are changed, and men are changed, and women are changed, those crimes start dropping drastically, and the young people start growing up in a different environment, an environment of righteousness, peace, love, hope, and it changes and transforms the whole community.
Crime prevention through faith intervention.
Oh, my brother, it's amazing.
Might be something to it.
Might be something there.
Now, we're in a community. Really? I was blown away to learn this at one time, but we're in a community where there are over 1,200 houses of worship. Yet we have crime and violence going through the roof. That again tells me, and don't take it as an insult, but as a challenge, which is, where are our people of faith? Yeah. You can't hide in the house of worship.
No, and as the church, and by the way, the church in Christianity is under assault. So as our law enforcement community is under attack, the Church of Jesus Christ is also under attack.
Well, that's why over the past few years here, where we've seen craziness. See, this is a big deal, where we were put to the test. You think about it with the pandemic that we had, and the challenges that we saw, and the efforts of folks to keep houses of worship from gathering. Mm-hmm. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
But this not only break my heart, but blow my mind when I would watch fellow law enforcement officers fall into these traps of trying to usurp houses of worship and prevent people from gathering, where it was at the very time that we all needed to be pulling in the same direction.
Absolutely.
Right? Where your communities needed faith, worship, walking with God, hope, on
peace,
in conjunction with public safety.
How about healing? Were there any sick among you? Let them call for the elders of the church. Was anybody sick during this time? Now, I get all of the, hey, this is something we don't know about. It's a strain. There's weird stuff.
No doubt.
Get all that.
And like we always say, set all that junk to the side. The point is, at a time where we needed to be the most unified, other forces were getting
That's right.
Getting them to work against each other.
And the Bible's very clear, where there's division, where there's strife, there is contention, and there's every evil work.
That's right.
So whether it's in your marriage, whether it's between you and your children, whether it's between you and your boss, whether it's between you and your pastor of the church,
community and the police,
where there's strife and there's every evil work.
Well, and you've got really this crack in your community. Again, evil follows the path of least resistance. So evil demonic forces will always move in.
That's right.
And invade those divisions. And so here again, why it's so important that I think we have those good open lines of communication. We have a brother of ours that makes a lot of efforts in that arena of combining the faith community and the law enforcement community together. There's something there that we all ought to drive into and really place an intentionality upon, for the benefit of everybody involved. But,
absolutely.
So that's just one of the things that we keep hammering away at. Again, the only thing I'm saying is I can testify to we are seeing the outcomes of these discussions and these focuses. Another exciting thing while we were at this, this podcast is separate and distinct from that work with the chaplaincy and the FOP and all that. But something that was cool was that at this meeting, this gathering, our national president, maybe I'm hopeful we can have him on the podcast here sometime, but he encouraged everybody to tune into the Remnant Revealed podcast.
Stop it.
How about that?
How about that?
I wasn't expecting
That's
that at all.
Awesome. Really?
Came out of nowhere, but it was very cool.
Catch you off guard of it.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And he spoke very highly of you as well. And grateful for all that you're doing.
Appreciate all he's doing.
To help our folks,
Yeah. Well,
and again, it's that mantra, keep driving all around the nation, which is now more than ever. Yeah. Faith in law enforcement is needed now more than ever. And
you just love people. You do it because you love people. It's wild when you have no agenda but to love people. Because they honestly, the people don't know how to take that.
Everybody's got an angle.
But when you just love people, it freaks them out because they can't figure out why you're doing what you're doing and why you spend the time to do it. What's the deal? What are you getting out of this? And when you say absolutely nothing,
that's the key.
But to love you, see, the Bible says, I owe man nothing. I owe no man anything but to love him.
Hey, by the way, that also means no man owes you anything.
But to love me.
That's it.
I've said that to the congregation here many times at the church.
Where we get the problems, where you get the division, where you get the strife is when one starts coveting from another, right?
That's right.
I want what you've got, or I think I should have that too, or whatever the case is,
right.
Or I want to get from you, something of benefit.
Right.
That's where all these things develop. And so that's
what makes a mess.
That's what's so powerful when we always say here, and you've always said, which is we love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Because it doesn't start with you. It starts with me in my heart.
There you go.
And you can't do anything about my heart. You can tell me you stop loving me right now. Nah. I'm not going to stop.
And you can't do anything about it.
Excuse me. Not one thing. I'm going to love you no matter what.
And really, that's something that our cops need to hear right now. Our police families need to hear right now. And to your point, when that is occurring, it's a two-way street as well. They're able to love those that they're serving in the community. No strings attached.
Zero.
There you go.
And here's the, people always say, well, what about people who aren't doing right? I still love them. I just want them to do right.
That's right.
But I still love them. Now, doesn't mean I have to like what you're doing. Right?
Right.
To love you doesn't mean I have to. My wife and I have had that agreement over the years to say to each other, I love you, but I don't like you right now.
Yeah.
Why? Because I don't like everything she does. And there's not a person on this planet that can tell me you like everything that everybody does.
Well, think about it. We're in a day and an age where everybody's trying to get other people to affirm in them things that they are doing that aren't right, that aren't truthful, that aren't correct. I mean, think about it. We have people that are raiding stores and stealing from stores and then saying, well, that's because we have folks that are hungry in the community. Well, because you're hungry in the community doesn't authorize you to go and steal from somebody else.
There's so much. There's so many places for people to get free food. There's no necessity to steal. I'm amazed. I watch this in the streets when we have done outreaches over the years and fixed wonderful food. Everybody just always wants to do a hot dog or something like that. But we've done even better than just a hot dog, right? Which I don't mind hot dog, but it's not my favorite thing because we grew up in poverty and hot dogs were made about every way you could make them to the point where you didn't want a hot dog ever again in your life. But I've watched people take that food, whether it's spaghetti or lasagna or some other wonderful thing, and throw it in the trash and walk away. You're not hungry. You don't. That wasn't. You could have given that to somebody else who may have been more hungry than you. I've watched people and humans over the years do things I don't like, but I still love them because I still love humanity.
But it doesn't mean that you uphold
what they do that's wrong
or affirm what they're doing that is wrong.
That's right.
And if you love somebody, love isn't telling somebody a falsehood or encouraging it or reaffirming it to them. Loving them is saying, here is truth. That's why we do this podcast. Hey, here's the truth. Right?
Yeah.
Trying to get this remnant revealed to you because we love you.
I'm not going to call it a flash dark when you and I both know it's a flashlight.
Yeah.
So that you don't have your feelings hurt or get mad at me. No, I want to call that a flash dark. Well, call it that all you want. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to because I know it's a flashlight. Right?
Well, yeah. And I think the greatest thing in that is when you jump down in the valley or you jump down in the pit, you walk along some folks who are struggling.
That's right.
Who have lost sight of what truth is.
Yeah.
You don't help them by belaboring falsehoods, right?
Yeah.
The way that you share one another's burdens is you've at least got to have an agreement, an objective, and a point of truth that you're working toward.
Now there are cops watching, so they'll get this. They'll appreciate this. I had a highly decorated, intense. He was a sniper,
mm-hmm.
and then he trained snipers for the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
He said guys in the field would come to me because they were shooting distance, and he said their grouping would be out here, and they would say, "I need help," because their grouping needed to get way tighter. Mm-hmm. Right? What am I doing wrong? I've been shooting XYZ yards and grouping really tight. Now all of a sudden I'm way out here. What in the world is going wrong? Mm-hmm. What am I doing wrong? He said, I never stood over them and told them, "Oh, you're not doing wrong. It's just the target's. Yeah. It's the target's fault."
Right.
You were doing
this
great.
This darn weather out here.
This weather, it's horrible. I can't believe your bullet's getting blown around.
How could anybody expect you to do better
That's
when
awful.
the wind's
They
blowing like
pick
this?
at you like
yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just wrong for them to expect that.
That would not be helpful.
No. He said, I would stand over them, watch them shoot, and then I would tell them what I saw them doing wrong, and they would make the adjustments. He said it was amazing. Once they made those adjustments, their grouping would slowly come back in, and they would be dead on target.
That's the whole key.
And they never got up from the ground or from where they were shooting and said, "You horrible, horrible man.
Yeah. How dare you?
How dare you treat me like this?" All you did was tell me what I was doing wrong. You didn't affirm me. You didn't tell me I was a good sniper anyway.
So jumping down into the pit,
right?
Walking along somebody through their valley. In that, you point them back to the truth, objective truth. And in doing so, you're building them back up to that point.
To that absolute truth.
That's what the Word of God tells us we're to do.
And what an anchor, right? Yeah. What an anchor. Every sniper has anchor points. Your body has to have anchor points to do anything repetitively in the same direction, the same way. You got to have an anchor.
That's right.
What an anchor are the absolute truths of God, of His character, His nature, His word, that holds us when everything else around us is going nuts.
Right.
His truth anchors us and keeps us strong.
And listen, there's a big move now, and it's a good thing, but there's a big move in law enforcement in terms of officer wellness.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Physical wellness, but mental and emotional wellness, right? Now, we also come at the angle of spiritual wellness.
We're saying add another component, guys.
There's a third leg to the stool.
That's right.
But on that mental and emotional wellness, issues of suicide in law enforcement, numbers, unbelievable numbers, right?
Yes, sir.
Let alone the line of duty deaths. As we've talked about, we're We've had National Police Week, that happens every May 15th. By the way, I got an interesting story on that.
Okay.
May 15th is National Law Enforcement Memorial Day.
That's right.
Why is it May 15th? Somebody could say, well, President Kennedy designated that day as National Law Enforcement Memorial Day. That is true, but why May 15th? You know what's interesting about that? May 15th is the day that two officers got together on a street corner in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Come on.
And said, we could do better. We could have it better. We could have better working conditions. They went to their mayor. They challenged the things that they were facing. And they had a mayor that responded to that and allowed them to form the very first Fraternal Order of Police in 1915.
Is that right?
And that came together. It was birthed on May 15th.
May 15th.
That's exactly right.
They stood up and said, we can be better.
Yeah. And did it alongside one another.
Yeah.
Helping one another, sharing in one another's burdens.
With the mayor.
And then now you've got May 15th is the National FOP Police Memorial in Washington, D.C. Pretty cool, huh?
It is very cool. And that's where we honor, of course, those
our fallen officers.
Yep, lost their lives, fallen.
Another 400-plus names added to the wall.
And when you told me that number, it's just staggering.
It's incredible, man.
And they're going to say those names publicly, one name after another.
That's exactly right.
And what an honor. It's also the only living memorial
in the District of Columbia. That's correct.
Yeah.
In D.C. there. And every year we keep adding more and more names. Now, we've also got the issue of suicide right along with that.
Yeah.
For all the officers that we tragically lose in the line of duty, we're losing 2 to 3. Research shows us it's probably underreported. More like 4 times as many are dying as a result of their own hand.
That's correct.
The reason why we're constantly bringing that up is because so many suffer in silence, and we don't want to have the silent majority on this issue anymore.
That's right.
And we want to talk about it. We want to put it on the table, and we also want to share in the burdens and walk alongside one another to help edify and build up our officers.
That's correct.
To get them through that time, that season. The Bible says there's a season, right?
That's
to
right.
Everything.
Yep.
And just reminding our officers that, hey, it's bad, but it's a season in life.
That's right.
There's something on the other side of this. Going to walk alongside you and push you through that if we have to.
It doesn't have to stay that way forever.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
And just a lot of great things going on in the world of wellness. I'm hopeful that we can bring some folks on here as well and talk about the developments that are occurring, the research that's taking place. There's been national surveys that have been completed, first time ever, related to law enforcement and the profession. And but the good news is this, is that for all of that, which is really good, there's this spiritual wellness component and faith. And the good news is there's another book that tells us all about that and helps us point us to the resources that we need.
And it's at the core of all the other wellnesses, the physical and the emotional and mental wellness. I was thinking about this because, as you're in the spring of the year, the sap that lay dormant in the roots starts pushing its way up into the tree. Apple trees specifically. I grew up in an apple growing community. That sap, it's not on the outside of the tree.
It's on the inside.
It's on the inside at the heart of the tree, but it's what gives the limbs, the fruit, every other thing its life.
Yeah.
You don't have sap, you don't have a tree.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a limb, you don't have fruit.
It's the lifeblood of the tree, right?
It's the lifeblood of the tree. Everything else about that tree and the fruitfulness and purpose of that tree is non-existent without taking care of the root and the sap that flows through that tree in its life.
Well, think about it. The officers that we see that are struggling the most, maybe they're bound by addiction issues, health issues, and then eventually leading to suicidal thoughts or acts, right? When you dig into all of that, it all goes back to the heart of the matter, The lifeblood has been drained from them.
That's right.
As far as they feel.
They bled out
believe.
spiritually.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's it right there. It is a spiritual vacuum, a hole.
Their God hole's empty.
That you're going to try to fill with something.
Yep.
And
it'll never be filled by something other than God.
There you go. There you go. You think about all the people that are struggling in the world today and all the friction and dissension and fighting and all those other things. When you dig into the heart of the matter and you see the humanity in folks, you'll quickly find out that many of those folks that are so upset and mad about this, that, or the other, they're really looking for God that's been missing in their life.
That's right. This is a great scripture that ties into all that we're talking about right now. Romans 15. Verse 1 says, "We then that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak." In other words, there are strong and weak among us. Even in the strongest elements of humans, in the strongest people groups of humans.
So if you're in a season where you're strong, we ought to be willing to jump into the pit and walk alongside.
Help those who are battling or struggling with weak. Now let me ask you, if you're married or you have a partner or whatever, if one or the other of you will be up while the other one's down.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Yeah.
In marriages or relationships, one is always encouraging the other. It's going to be okay. We're going to make it. And then this person seems to grab it, rise to the occasion. And all of a sudden, it'll be at a time when this person's going through something.
Balance.
Right? Balance. It's all, but you're always doing this.
Right.
Right?
You might feel out of balance, but you're really balancing one another.
That's right, because a scale never sits perfectly still.
Right.
It's always coming into play. You'll see it do some of this and just, but you can tell where it's at, right? Those that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak and not to please ourselves. Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good, to edification, which that word edification means to build up or to be building somebody up.
There you go.
So officers, we already know that right now the season or the climate for police officers is these groups, this spirit of evil is working its best to drive you to your knees and make you as weak as possible.
No doubt.
Those that are strong need to think about and exercise the gift that's in them to move towards helping, strengthening, edifying, encouraging, and lifting up those that they already know among them are struggling. The words you just said about suicide and things, officer suicide, things that we know when someone is battling and struggling in their life, we should come alongside of them, lift them up, and begin to encourage them and edify them so that they can make it through that very difficult time. Not to please ourselves.
Right.
Right? Not to say, well, I'm good. Man, you ought to get it.
What's wrong with what you're getting out of it.
That's right.
I think what a lot of officers struggle with, and we see in many police suicides, is in suicide in general, right? The spirit of suicide.
Right.
You also have the dilemma where you're completely caught off guard by it.
Right.
Why didn't I see this? Why didn't I see this coming? And that's a great pain that lingers with folks. That's also why you see a lot of times additional incidents that occur really as a ripple effect of the one instance of suicide. I've seen stories in agencies where that has occurred, even multiple people within the same unit. I've even learned of some where members of the same unit have gone back to the same spot, the same location where the first took their life, and done that as well. What that tells me is that there is a spirit that has enveloped that situation.
Absolutely.
And but here again, what changes that? See, that's for me is the wild thing in all this. It can be as simple as just one word of encouragement.
That's right.
One word of life into that situation. And so what you talked about, one inkling of light into the darkness, it drives it away.
That's right.
Right? Darkness is the absence of light. So you just spill just a little, you just run your light across the area one time. It can change the whole course of events.
Absolutely.
And that's where it's so important, I think, where we're diligently, intentionally, proactively stepping through this issue of wellness, which was really just life, love, faith, hope, for the challenges that everybody faces.
100%.
And I think this is a great message, not just for law enforcement officers, but also for anybody in general. You know,
absolutely.
I have to believe that somebody, maybe even a critic of law enforcement, doesn't even like cops, stumbles upon this episode. I pray that we're speaking life into their situation,
into their life,
of whatever they may be facing.
And hey, I pray every day. And listen, if you're a believer, if you're a Christian, and you love people, and you love God, pray every day and ask the Lord to open doors for you to speak. Maybe you're a family member of a law enforcement officer, or you're a law enforcement officer that's a believer. Ask the Lord to show you or reveal to you men and women that are on the edge where you don't get caught off guard. Most of the time we get caught off guard because there is a spirit of deception about the person that is having thoughts of taking their own life. Well, they don't want you to know that because, again, they don't want to appear weak, right? But you never know when one word you might say unlocks their heart to where they look at you as a person who's trustworthy to share the secrets of their heart with.
Yeah.
And it may unlock that thing, and you literally save their life physically as well as with Christ spiritually, mentally, and emotionally.
This
and
word,
you bear their infirmity, right?
Just like the scripture says.
That's
and
right.
so this word not only helps, but it affirms what these two dudes have just been talking about, right? So it verifies it, it validates the point that we're, I think, attempting to make. Now, one thing that I always think about our podcast is I have to believe at some point in time it can sometimes seem dark. It can seem like we're always talking about negative things, the challenges of the job, all those things, just like this, sharing one another's burdens. But I want to ask you something. What are some of the highlights for you? You've walked a life of sharing in other people's burdens. That's got to drain you and take it out of you. What are some of the highlights? What are some of the positives that have come from that for you?
Yeah, I don't.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I don't see really what we're doing as being dark. I think really we're shining the light on the darkness that seeks to hurt and harm people. So becoming an encourager or being one that prays and asks the Lord for direction to help other people, to me, is the greatest joy, because it's the revealer of the amount of love that God has for every human being.
You passed the test right there, because I think that's the key. We're actually encouraging folks,
right,
by acknowledging the fact that, hey, there's always challenges in this life. There's always going to be challenges in this profession.
That's exactly right.
The great scourge that's happened on our profession, and quite frankly throughout our nation, is people just throwing their hands up and saying, well, I guess that's just the way it is. And then when you get down in this pit, you don't think you can ever get out. You just keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper.
That's right.
What we're trying to do is say, hey, we're acknowledging the challenge.
Yeah.
But there is an answer.
That's right.
And there's a way out, and here's a ladder, here's a rope that we're throwing to you to get up out of there.
And the number one thing that wellness and spiritual wellness and physical wellness have an agreement on is that it's the refusal to talk about it. And it's the refusal to talk about what you're going through that creates a realm for the enemy that hates your soul to continue to do this to human after human after human after human. So I think the more we expose what the enemy's plan is, the more that plan doesn't work on the humans that need the deliverance from the voice that tells you to do something to harm yourself. So the joy comes, of course, from helping people and loving people, no matter what their job is. Seeing people have their heart and their mind shift from the pain and the hurt and the suffering that they're dealing with to, I can make it. Mm-hmm. I can come out of this.
Watching them transform.
Watch them transform.
Inside out.
Today's my day.
Yeah.
Today's my hour. Oh, man, I'm telling you, I know what I was thinking in those days, and now I don't. I'm not tormented by that. I don't have to drink this in order to go to sleep. I don't have to do these things in order to find some way of just getting some level of peace in my life. Mm-hmm. Man, you want to talk about organic, right? Mm-hmm. So I think for me, personally, in helping people, even, cops and all that we do every day, the joy is seeing the transformation of being tormented to being filled with peace and joy and love and acceptance in Christ, and knowing, oh my gosh, man, I didn't know this was even a possibility to be an answer for my life.
And
right?
we're seeing it. We're seeing officers are saying,
my gosh,
again, where's this been all my life? They're getting into this
43 years, 50, and they say, where were you?
That's
well,
right.
They're not really saying, where was I? What they're really saying is, where was the message you
Where
had?
was the answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where was the answer that you brought to the table?
Yeah.
To me, that's, gosh. And then the young officers that are coming on that go, I'm going to do it differently because I want a different result from what my dad did or my grandpa did. Now, I want to be a great cop like they were,
right?
But I don't want the answer in my life to be what I know caused them to struggle and have issues. I want to see that fixed in my life. So they start asking you questions, towards the right answer, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And it starts working in their life.
And I think that, the nice thing about that is it is then this ripple effect in the positive.
That's right.
Which is you watch those folks then go out and say to others, hey, let me tell you about let me tell you about something.
You don't have to go this direction.
That is it. That is it. So I think that's of interest for people to hear. When you're it's just like officers. I'd ask the same question. You're constantly surrounded by death, destruction, drama, trauma, all those other things
every day.
How in the world do you make it through that? What gives you the joy? What keeps you coming back? What's the positive that comes out of it? Well, it's those individual instances where you see that glimmer of hope, that light flicker that keeps you coming back.
And I want to tell you, there are lots of police officers who love God. Don't ever assume that there aren't cops who absolutely are passionate for God. There are lots of officers, and they love God with their whole heart, and they will tell you unequivocally, this is how I did this career for all of these years.
That is right.
I stood with God. I read my Bible every day. I prayed. I talked to the Lord. And man, it was just as hairy, just as scary, just as crazy, just as courageous as any other officer on the department. But God got me through these circumstances, these situations, because I put my trust in Him.
And He's the greatest example of sharing your burdens.
That's exactly right. Yeah, buddy.
Right? So, I think that gives people hope, is that even if that person hasn't come into your life or crossed your path or whatnot, maybe this discussion does, to point you back to the giver of life. If we're talking about speaking life into your situation, it doesn't get bigger than the giver of life. He's in this book. He is this word.
Yep.
And He can walk alongside you.
And what, it's just categorically what every person does. If you're in the desert and you find water, and you know that there are people who don't know where that water's at, the very first thing you think about is getting them to the water you found.
That is right.
So the burning passion in your heart is to get people's lives.
It's so ironic because this is what I'm sitting here looking up. I was trying to remember the source of the quote. It's D.T. Niles.
Okay.
Which is Christianity is one beggar telling another
where
beggar
to find bread.
Where he found the bread.
That's right.
Which is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
That's exactly it. It's funny because that's exactly where I was going.
So when you talk about those that are strong, use another phrase. Those that have found the water
in the desert,
bear the thirst of the weak and go help them, please. Now, when they drink that water, it's not going to quench your thirst. But man, it sure blesses you when they tilt their head back and go, oh, I thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
I was so dry. I was so thirsty. There's just something inside of you that is just so grateful you helped them find that water to drink.
Well, there are various law enforcement crisis lines, helplines for law enforcement officers, public safety folks. You have it for military veterans as well, where you can pick up the phone and you can call. The person on the other side of that line isn't some doctor, isn't somebody that's squirreled away in a lab somewhere.
Right.
It's a fellow officer, firefighter, military veteran who has walked the walk, probably gone through hell and back themselves.
Right.
Somebody told them where to find the bread, and now they're on the other end of that line saying to you, hey, brother, hey, sister, I've been there.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, there is hope, and this is where it's at. It's what we're doing here, too, with the R&R family.
Yep.
I mean, our great hope is what we say is share these episodes.
That's right.
If you don't know what to say to that peer, or you think there could be an issue, or maybe you think, I don't know if there is, share these episodes, and it may be the key that unlocks that room, that cellar of darkness that they're in, and opens up the door to where there's some light shining in, and they can find their way out of there.
That's right.
That's the greatest reward I think we could have from doing this all the time and talking about these issues of life.
And Jesus went into the darkest of the dark so that you could have the lightest of the light.
Yeah.
He's already paid that price for that. He bought the right for you to walk in the light of love, the light of life, the light of forgiveness. There's nothing that you've done that God is unwilling to forgive you for what you've done. People talk about the unpardonable sin.
Hey, man, there's a lot of people that don't believe that.
That's
that
right.
don't believe what you just said.
Yeah.
They can't believe that it's possible.
That it's possible. But I want to tell you, there's only one unpardonable sin, and the person who walks in that never wants to be forgiven anyway.
Yeah, well, it's the spirit of unbelief.
That's right.
So when we just said there's somebody that doesn't believe what you just said, that's the greatest deficit you could ever have.
The only sin that's not forgiven is the sin that's never asked to be forgiven of.
There you go.
That's why it's unpardonable. But
it's
Jesus
not unpardonable because God doesn't want to pardon it.
Thank you.
He can't.
He can't.
Because
you don't want him to.
There you go.
So, again, that shows the source of free will, right?
That is right.
I don't care about you. I don't want it. But the joy of salvation is accepting what Jesus has paid for as him paying the full price.
Well, and here again, that's what I've been testifying to when I go to these meetings. I mean, we've shared it on here, but we've been able to see it in just the last year. I mean, the one presentation in North Carolina, 26 plus officers giving their lives to Christ. In Tennessee, speaking and just sharing and whatever it was, 9 officers, 10 officers, then 5 more officers over here turning their lives over to Christ. Well, how's that happening? What's going on there? Officers that are being baptized. When I was in Boston, I got to see Brad again. Then Brad is awesome. The guy that we shared about that wanted to be baptized down in Dallas, Texas, and we went to a swimming pool at the hotel and did the dunking as he said. And he came He was at this meeting in Boston, and we linked back up, you know. And here's my point. There's no greater joy than standing with the dude that wanted to be baptized, and you got to be alongside him when that happened.
And how many people has he told that story to?
Oh, thousands, because he's put it out there.
Right. So
social media and everything else.
So if you say, well, gosh, 9 officers, that's not very many. But how many people have those 9 officers talked to?
That's exactly right.
All you got to do is just start with one.
Yeah.
And that one multiplies. It's multiplication, not addition.
That's right.
Remember that.
We serve a God of multiplication.
Right. So 1 times 1 may be 1.
Mm-hmm.
But as you move past 3, 4, you start multiplying. That number is a whole lot different than 4 plus 4. What about 4 times 4 now?
It's that age-old story of the kid on the shoreline throwing the starfishes back in the water, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And somebody comes along
His
and
dad
says, "You can't save them all. What are you doing?" And he throws one more in, and he says, "I saved that one."
Saved that one.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the way it works of shouldering up to a fellow officer.
That's right.
You may not be able to save every officer, but you can help that one.
You can help that one. And then how many will that one touch?
The ripple effects.
How do you know?
You'll never know.
There was, who led Billy Graham to Christ?
That's right.
Hey, all these other great.
Think about that.
Think about that. Now look at the millions.
Yeah.
Over and still through his son and his grandsons. There you go. Right there.
Billy Graham training Bible right there.
We then that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak, and not to please ourselves. Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification. Love God, love your neighbor.
That's it.
Love God, love your neighbor. Right? So fulfill the law of Christ.
Simplicity of the gospel.
It is. Simple.
And the greatest hope we have.
I love you, my friend. I call you blessed
too,
today.
That's
it's awesome. It's great. It's great. We love you guys too. Hey, give us a thumbs up. Hit the bell. And we're going to have to close out because we're out of time. But
hey, and I would say this: throw this link to this episode on your social media platform.
Absolutely,
because that'll get it out there and in front of other people, and you don't know who you're going to help.
And sometimes people are nervous because they don't think they know what to say. Use us. Throw us out there.
Yeah,
we'll say it.
Yeah,
and then you can point back to that. God bless you. We'll see you real soon. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Rick and I trust that you heard something that will help your life. And if you believe that it would help others, please make sure and share. Like and subscribe and hit that bell so that you can be notified when the next podcast is available. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.